Hey everybody, this is Kevin from Fort Orange Woodworking, and in today's video we are going to be talking about safety, and in particular we are going to be talking about push sticks. Now, as you can see here, I have a variety of push sticks in front of me that I use for different purposes and project types, and each one serves a different function. So before we begin taking a look at all of these different types and which one might be best for you, let's address why we need push sticks in the first place. For one thing, a push stick will help guide your workpiece through your table saw safely, and it will keep your fingers away from the blade. Now, that's obviously our primary concern. However, we also want to keep a push stick handy so that we can prevent kickback. Now, kickback occurs when your workpiece is going through the table saw and it pinches between the fence and the blade. And if it's not properly being held down, this piece can get kicked up and back because the blade is spinning this way with a lot of force, and it is creating pressure to create your wood to go straight back. Now, one of two things, like I kind of mentioned, can happen. It can go up and back like this, or it can go straight back like this. And when this does happen, it tends to happen at a very, very high velocity, and it can cause a serious injury, especially if you're not wearing other safety gear like glasses. So, let's take a look at the different types of push sticks that I have in front of me. This one right here is a push block. It's plastic and foam, and this comes in a kit. It typically comes with a bunch of different pieces like this in a multi-piece kit. Handy to have. Excuse me. Handy to have a kit because it gives you different choices for different needs. This one I like because it will cover an entire piece of wood as you push it, and it'll ensure that there is distribution along the whole piece of wood so that it goes through. Now, the drawback of this one, however, is that there is nothing on the tail end that's pushing the wood forward, and you don't always need that. You don't always need to push the wood from the back end. Most times it's sufficient just to apply pressure and guide it through. But this is nice because it covers the whole piece of wood. Comes in a kit. Let's talk about the other pieces that come in that kit. These are pads, same concept. The only difference is they tend to be one-handed each instead of a two-handed push. You can use these on corners. These are nice because you can dig them into the back and the front. The foam eventually does wear down over time and get little chips and things like that in it. And there are varying levels of how much resistance you can apply with the foam. So one of the concerns is that it might be a little bit too slippery on top of a work surface, depending on what kind of wood you're using and what kind of cuts you're making. But I tend to use these for my joiner so that I can keep these down. I don't use them for the table saw as much, but I do have them, and they do come in the kit. Now, another thing that comes in the kit, very standard types of push sticks you see here. Mine have gone through the table saw itself. If you can see closely, it's got a bunch of gouges and nicks in them. I really don't even use these anymore because once this little nub on the end here, it's a right angle cutout. Once that becomes chipped away, it's really not much good anymore. But what these are good for is pushing the back and pushing the side to ensure that your piece is staying tight against the fence and it's going through from the back side. The drawback to these is that there is hardly any pressure being applied to the top of the piece of wood, so there's nothing really preventing kickback other than a little bit of pressure at one point. I don't use these often. I typically only use them one at a time to push a piece against the fence or to help guide it through in combination with my gripper, which I will get to in a second. Some of these kits have this little guy here, And this is a narrow width push stick. And I really, really like this one for when I am doing cuts with narrow pieces of wood. And I want to make sure that I'm pushing from the back. Now, I wouldn't use this one for a piece this long probably, because it really only covers not even half of my workpiece. So I'd be worried about this kicking up and back. But if this were a, let's say, smaller piece, I would get a decent amount of pressure almost all the way across the length of the board, along the length of the board. And I like this for my narrow cuts when I'm cutting things that are, less than an inch or so that this can guide through the table saw and the fence without cutting it and without getting my fingers anywhere near the blade. So this is super handy. Love having this one around. If you don't have a narrow grip push stick, I highly recommend you get one with the little cutout notch in the back so that you can push your workpiece through. Now, let's talk more about narrow pieces. This technically is not a push piece, but I thought I would include it because I use it a lot. This is a thin rip jig. I use this pretty much every time I'm cutting a thin piece of wood into strips. And what this does is it acts as a push stick on one side, and it has a bearing type wheel here that pushes the workpiece along. It is adjustable, and it butts right up to the fence, and it helps guide the wood through along this side of the blade. So although it's not technically a push stick, it does assist, kind of like there's other stuff that does this too, like feather boards and things like that. I do use this all the time, so I did want to include it in my review. This guy right here is the push stick that came with my Delta table saw. It's okay. I like that it's longer. I can get some good distance with it. But what I don't like about it, although it has a notch on the back, it's a pretty deep notch. It looks like it's at least ½ an inch, so it doesn't work for my smaller pieces like this one. And it applies no pressure to the top and no pressure to the side. So I could never use this one by itself. I do, however, use it as like I would one of these with a side push or a push from the rear. This little guy right here is a homemade push stick that is near the end of its lifespan. And as you can see here, it's been chewed up pretty good because I will use this as a sacrificial push stick when I'm pushing a piece of wood through and the blade is going to be coming up over the workpiece. But for one reason or another, let's say maybe it's a very narrow cut and there's no way I'm going to get any of my other push sticks through without cutting them, I'll use a sacrificial push stick such as this one made out of scrap wood so that it'll go through. I can push it. The blade will catch it and it will cut it, but that's okay because this is mostly junk anyway, and I can always make more. Now, two more that I have here. This one is my gripper. I got this as a Christmas gift because a lot of my tools that I don't really need but I want, I tend to ask for as gifts, and this was one that I got for Christmas one year, and this thing is great. It is very adjustable. It can go up and down with a fence here. It can also, you can adjust the rubber pads on the bottom to slide one way or another so that you're just cutting on one side of the fence or the other. And it also has on the end a 1/4 inch narrow grip surface, so that if you are doing narrow cuts and you're going to be tight to the fence, you can use the gripper in a narrow cut situation. And what I like about the gripper is because it's adjustable. Let's see here. Because it's adjustable, if I'm cutting a piece that's, say, this height, I can put it up and on it, and then I can adjust my fence, and it will create even pressure without being wobbly, which is one of the drawbacks of, say, using a pad. So this is highly adjustable. It comes with a bunch of different features too. You can add on to your gripper. They've got a ton of different things that you can add to this. So I do use this one quite a bit. I keep it right on top of my table saw so that it's handy. Big safety help. Got a great handle. The grip is very good. It really grabs your workpiece pretty well. Now, lastly, and I think probably most importantly, if I had to have only one of these, I think this would be the one that I have.
It's the best. I love it.
This is my homemade push block that I made out of some scrap wood that wasn't getting any other purpose. I gave some little finger grooves for it so that it's got a nice handle. I can fit my whole hand inside there. It's got a good solid block on top. It's pretty wide, so it can cover a good amount of surface area for different types of work pieces. Obviously, the only drawback to this one, or the main drawback to this one, is this is as thin, as narrow as I can go with the table saw. However, I do have a workaround for that. I currently have on here a sacrificial board, which is just screwed into the bottom of this. And I made sure that I drilled some pilot holes for this so that the screws don't accidentally get cut by the table saw if this goes a little too deep. So that's one thing that you do need to be very careful of if you're going to use screws. But what's great about this is when this gets chewed up on the bottom, I can take it off, put a new one on, and it doesn't affect my push block at all. And lastly, you can see here that it's got an adjustable block on the end, and I can adjust this wing nut here and slide this piece up and down for various thicknesses of wood. So if I'm cutting a piece like this, I can adjust it to here, and if I'm going with a much more narrow piece, I can close it in even further, and I can lock that securely with my wing nut. And this too is sacrificial. So if this gets chewed up and cut up too much, as you can possibly see here, it's been chewed up a little bit, I can just put another one on, and I've basically got an entirely new push stick. So this one is my favorite. And there you have it. That has been our quick overview on push sticks and what their various purposes are, the pros and cons. I hope that you found this helpful. If you have a push stick that you use that you find is missing from the list, I would love to hear what you have to say. Drop a comment in the comment section. And as always, and there you have it. That is our quick overview on push sticks and what their different purposes are. If you have one that you like to use, feel free to mention it in the comments. I'm always happy to hear from you guys. Love to hear your comments. Love to communicate with everyone out there. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to visit our Etsy shop, Fort Orange Woodworks. And I will see you next time in the shop. Take care. Thanks, everyone.